Happy Wednesday. I need social studies. We're going to start with that today. So I need chapter 9, lesson 1 notes out. It's what you're supposed to do yesterday. Read lesson 1, take some notes. So if you watched the video I posted, you should have at least this much down, but you should have added some more. So get those out. I'm going to move this a little closer. Open up the social studies chapter 9 lesson 1 PDF on your iPad as well, so you can look for any additional notes we might add. You're also going to want out your vocab people places, which should be in the same notebook, so get those out. Do yours. This is not an option. Taking notes is part of being prepared for the next day. It's for being ready for the test and the discussion and the quiz and the worksheet and all that good stuff. Taking notes is not an option. Well, if it has to bring those in and out, then it's different.
Oh, I found it.
Okay?
I found them.
That's it? No, you didn't finish. You copied what I did, and then you didn't finish the rest of it. I need to see all of it. All right. Chapter 9, lesson 1. I started with the personal hardships for you in that video, so you have those. And then you were reading economic hardships, which would be on page 340. So your question you were trying to answer was, how did inflation affect people during the Revolutionary War? Before we talk about how it affected them, how did it happen? What happened that caused inflation? Jackson?
The government printed too much money, so they thought it wasn't valuable.
Okay, too much money was printed. What else caused it? Anything else? Sean?
It was kind of what Jackson said. The money was falling in value.
It was because they printed too much. If I look in that paragraph that starts the economic hardships, I see it says, along with personal problems, Americans also faced many economic hardships during the Revolutionary War. British blockades stopped ships from reaching American ports. These trade barriers, known as embargoes, caused shortages of imported goods. So not only was the money going up because they didn't have the goods to buy, right? But they didn't have the goods to buy because, what did Britain do? Adam? Close those ports, right? And we've talked a lot about how important those are. So they couldn't get anything in. Okay, Sean?
Also, I think because they had trouble paying for the war.
That could be, right. They were trying to pay for a war on top of getting these goods. Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. What's profiteering? Let's talk about that word. I have to do attendance while I'm thinking about it here. That's why I took it off the board. Profiteering, John?
Charging extra high prices for costly goods.
Okay, so let's go back to our question. So profiteering was charging high prices. How did inflation affect people during the Revolutionary War? Kind of talked about some of it. Let's answer that question. I think everybody is here. There we go. All right. Emmy.
There were some breaking the law by collecting large amounts.
One more time, real loud.
There were some breaking the law by collecting large amounts.
Okay, so some were breaking the laws, right? Trying to collect, profiteering, weren't they? Some were profiteering, collecting high amounts. Okay, that weren't fair. Sean?
When people started hoarding, I think it said.
Okay, so hoarding means they're just taking a bunch that they necessarily don't need, right? Kind of like,
Before the pandemic.
right, kind of like what happened with the pandemic. Good.
And,
toilet
the people
Yeah.
needed more money to buy the same amount of goods.
Okay, they needed more money to get all their needs, right, met. Kenny, what else?
They, less goods were produced.
Okay, less were produced. They weren't getting the resources again they needed, right, John? Yes, wheat and beef doubled. Is that what you were gonna say, Nick? Yep, the prices of wheat and beef had doubled. Good. So they're needing more money. Okay, so what does economy mean? I talked about that a little bit in my video. That's an important word. We see it all the time. What is economy? Or here they're using the word economic. What's that mean, Nick?
It's like a, like the town, not the town, but like what's happening.
Okay, so it is kind of like the place, right? Here are
Yeah.
colonies.
Yeah.
We're suffering. Okay, which made the colonists suffer. Sean?
I think it's kind of like government's money or.
Kind of, yeah, it's how they're surviving, right? What resources that these colonies can provide, how they're making money, right? We're seeing that this money is becoming less in value because they're printing so much of it. Okay, so the economy of these colonies is falling because their money isn't worth anything, they're not getting imported goods, they aren't able to make the things they needed to make to survive. Okay, so economy is kind of several things. All right. Your next section they talked about was women and the war. So you were answering what caused some women to fight in the American Revolution. Brendan?
And then left their homes to fight in the. I did not finish that. War.
Some did leave their homes to fight in the war, right? Some did do that, yes.
Okay, so I was.
So you were correct. Yep. Nick?
Women took adding that women took on new roles. Some women ran family farms or businesses.
Good.
They raised money for the war, collected clothing for soldiers.
Good, they did. They collected clothes, they would make food, okay, money, they were helping in any way they could. Okay, working and running the businesses, we talked a little bit about that the other day. Kenny?
Abigail Adams could write letters about freedom and take care of homeless children.
Good, so we mentioned there are several women in here that you should have written down, and I am gonna get to those. Abigail Adams is who he mentioned, okay, and she was writing letters asking for freedom, right? She wrote them for her husband. What else? Brendan?
A 16-year-old Sybil
Yep, Sybil Luddington.
rode more than 40 miles to tell Africans of the British attack.
So she was telling Americans of a British attack, right? She was young and she was trying to help, wasn't she? Okay, 16 seems very young. Okay, especially today. It's young. Maya?
Deborah Samson
Uh-huh.
to be a man and dress in men's clothes so she could fight in.
Yeah, Deborah Sampson was another one. There's quite a few in here, right? And she was pretending to be a man so she could fight. She wanted to help as well. Nick, give us another one.
Martha Washington traveled to be with her husband George in army camps.
Right, and she was one where you had mentioned, right? They're cooking food, they're washing clothes, so she was helping George Washington and his army do,
Chores thing.
yeah, kind of things that they needed to survive. Good. John?
I have two things.
Sure.
Margaret took place,
Margaret Corbin. Mm-hmm.
took place for her husband, and
Yeah, I think he was wounded, right? And she kind of took over for him and helped fight.
other
Okay.
women used talents to support the Patriots' cause.
Are you looking at Mercy Warren, who wrote poems?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was helping the Patriots by writing poems and stories, right, and kind of getting the information out there to people. Good. All right, I think we covered all of the important women of the war.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next page. 342, African Americans free and enslaved. So you were answering the question, why did some enslaved African Americans fight in the Revolutionary War? One main reason, Adam, why? Right, they were promised freedom. If they helped win this war, they were promised freedom. Why do you think that might pose? That was kind of a risk. That was kind of a dangerous thing to do. Why do you think they were willing to fight and sacrifice for this war? Nick?
Because basically, so the risk for it is they might get like hurt or die, but the good thing is if they don't get injured or anything like that, they're free.
What if Britain were to have won?
Then they would be, weren't to have won? Like they
What if
lost?
Britain did win? What if we lost? What if the colonists lost and Britain won? So remember back to signing the Declaration of Independence, that was kind of a dangerous thing to do too, right? Because they could be charged with treason.
If Britain, because if Britain won, then we would, the colonies would get charged with treason, and they would all be in
Right,
trouble.
they would all be in trouble. So they
Especially,
were
like, the
taking a risk
important
too, weren't
people
they?
like Thomas Jefferson. or
Right,
people.
right. They were all taking this big risk, but they were going to help because if without their help, right, we may not have won. They needed all the help they could get. So they had some important people in here. Who's James Armistead? James Armistead. He's an important person you should have written down. Who is he, Maya?
He was a spy for George Washington.
Yeah, he was helping George Washington. He would spy on Britain and see what was going on and report back to George Washington. Peter Salem. He's on that last paragraph there on 342. Who was that, John?
Among at least 5 African Americans who fought the British at the Battle of Concord.
Yeah, he fought at the Battle of Concord. He also fought at Bunker Hill.
Yeah.
And then they mentioned James Fortin. His name isn't bold, but it says from Philadelphia. He was 14 years old when he joined the Continental Navy. So again, we had 16 and now 14.
Well,
So
that's
imagine
young.
what you guys are probably 10, 11.
That's only a year
So
older.
yeah, not too far off, right? That's very young to be in a war and fighting against other grown men. Okay? All right, so the last page, 343. What caused, and there's that name, I have to look at the pronunciation, Thayendanegea, to make alliances with the British? What was he hoping for? Kenny?
He didn't want settlers in the West.
Yeah, I was hoping to stop the settlers from moving west. Okay, so he was a Native American trying to keep their land, right, from being taken over. Who did the Native Americans side with? Who did they side with, Adam? Yeah, some of them were divided, right? Many of them were divided, but they did side with kind of both. It said many groups eventually sided with the British, okay, in hopes that they would stop the colonies from moving west, okay? So that was lesson 1. We're kind of advancing into this war and what's going to happen. So your workbook page, we're actually going to look at together. So I'm going to pull up the preview here. Schoology 9-1 workbook, there are 5 questions, and then I have a little contest we're going to do here. Get some points going. But we're going to do this first. We're going to do it together. So it's asking you, who would have said these things? So let's review. Who are the Patriots? Tell me who the Patriots are. Canyon?
Colonists.
Those are the colonists. Yep, those are the ones fighting for independence, right? The loyalists are who? John?
The British.
Right, they're the British. They're the ones that are loyal to the king. Okay, so they might be colonists as well, but they're loyal to the king. And these colonists are fighting for independence. Okay? And then those that are neutral, what's that word mean? Emmy?
The people who didn't pick a side.
Yeah, they didn't choose, right? They kind of stayed out of it.
Like,
Okay, so
they
what
don't-
would who would say this? Which of these three would say this statement? It says, I never thought I would burn my own crops, but it's better than giving food to redcoats. Who are the redcoats? So we have to think of. Kenny? Right, the redcoats are the loyalists. Who would have said this, Kenny? The patriots would have said this.
Wouldn't they burn their own crops so they could get more money?
They weren't burning them to get more money. Why were they burning their own crops? Maya? Right, they didn't want the British to use them. So they were destroying them so they couldn't use them. They didn't want to help them. All right, question 2 says, I don't care who wins. I just want this war over. Claire? Neutral person would say that, right?
I feel like it's a little like too obvious that's neutral.
Right.
It's the only one that's-
The soldiers have a right to take what they need from rebels. Who would say that?
Wait,
The soldiers, have a right to take what they need from rebels. Wyatt. Loyalists, yeah, they would be in support of those redcoats, right? Those soldiers. So they would say they could take what they want. And they would be calling the patriots the rebels. Okay, we good? We all caught up?
Yeah.
I should have given you a minute to get into it here. Let's recap real quick. So number 1 was patriots. 2 was the neutral. 3 is loyalist. Question 4. I do not understand why my son has chosen to fight on the side of people who betray their king. Ooh. Adam? Loyalists, right? So this father is a loyalist, and his son would be what? A patriot. All right. Question 5. People who profiteer are traitors to the cause of freedom. Ooh, who would say that one? Claire? What's that? Patriot. Yeah, patriots. So they're trying to work for freedom, and profiteering was not something that they would have done. So you're going to hit submit, or I guess you're going to hit review answers and then submit. Mine won't let me do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And hopefully we should all have 100%. Which, like, which one? Oh. All right. Now, that's right. What is the challenge? So we just read some statements and decided who would have said them. I want you to think of your own statement, okay? And then you're going to post that statement on updates. And you're going to tell us, was it a patriot? Was it a loyalist? Or was it a neutral person? It doesn't matter to me which one you pick. Whether you were a patriot or a loyalist, doesn't matter. Okay, think of something one of them would say. You're going to post it on updates.
How do you spell one?
Okay, and for every one, now you can post once. Okay, each person gets one. And you have to make sure it's a statement and that you correctly said who would have said that. So if you tell me a statement and then you give me the wrong person, that's not going to count. Okay, so everybody has the chance to get at least 1 point, okay, for their team. Creative statements or sayings could get more points. So by creative, I mean I didn't just dig one through the book. I didn't just find one in the book or look one up on Safari. I've thought about what I've learned. I've thought about what I've read. And this is something I think a patriot or a loyalist or a neutral person would say. Okay? So that is your challenge for today. Give me a statement that you've come up with and tell me who would have said it. Okay? We got a couple of questions. Eli?
Could it be a neutral person?
Yeah, it could be neutral, sure. But again, creative. Brendan?
So each one of us that did it correct, it will be marked as a point. And
Correct. Each one that does it or attempts, you don't have to, this is kind of an option. Okay, but each person that provides one on updates and correctly states some things a patriot, loyalist, or a neutral person would say would get a point. Okay? Wyatt? All right. So that's what you're working on right now. Thinking of your statement And
I think
who would
we're
say it?
gonna